Join today's top women retail leaders at the 2026 Women in Retail Leadership Summit, held April 27th through the 29th at the JW Marriott Miami Turnberry Resort. It's 3 days of fresh thinking, leadership insight, and meaningful connections. Register now at womeninretailsummit.com and save $100 with discount code PODCAST.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Women in Retail Talks, the podcast where C-suite executive women in the retail space share their stories of professional growth, leadership development, and more. I'm Melissa Campanelli, the co-founder of the Women in Retail Leadership Circle, which is a membership-based community of executive women at leading retailers and brands. In this episode, I'm thrilled to welcome Katherine Danneberg, the Chief Commercial Officer at Boden, which is the quintessentially British clothing brand for women and children with the tagline, "Happiness You Can Wear." Prior to Boden, Katherine has held high-level merchandising roles at companies such as Uncommon Goods, Anthropologie, The Children's Place, One Kings Lane, and Opening Ceremony. We're thrilled to have you here, Katherine. Welcome.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm thrilled to be here as well and chat with you.
Yes, I'm so excited. We're recording this right around Christmas time, so there's a lot of excitement with the holidays coming up and all that good stuff. And we really appreciate you taking the time to do this at this busy time. So please tell us about your career journey. And we talked a little bit about it in the opener, but tell us about your career journey and sort of how you ended up at Boden.
I guess when I think about my journey and starting from the beginning, I guess as they say, I've always been really lucky to be able to have chosen or have the opportunity to choose opportunities that align with both my dreams and my ambition. I've always loved fashion. My first memory of, learning about fashion was my grandmother and being at her house and seeing my first copy of Vogue magazine and opening it and just being like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." And I think from that moment when I was probably like 6 years old, I knew that this was what I wanted to do. I actually started my journey a little bit more untraditionally for someone who has been in retail and has a role like mine. I actually started in fashion forecasting and
Hmm.
then kind of evolved more into product development, buying, and merchandising. And I had an opportunity pretty early on in my early 30s to work for a brand that I personally loved, which was Anthropologie. And that was totally a game changer for me as far as just really understanding the customer because it was me. Being part of something that was growing. We only had 28 stores when I started at Anthropologie. And when I left, I believe there was 180. And just really learning how to be an entrepreneur also within a corporate environment, which is something that I've also carried forward with me in all of my roles. The other thing that has paid forward for me is that I've managed to develop really strong relationships with my direct managers and the CEOs of the companies that I've worked for. And actually, how I landed at Boden is the former CEO of Urban was a board member at Boden, and he recommended me for the role that I have now at the company.
Great. I always love to hear those kind of backstories, sort of the connections and the importance of networking and all that good stuff. So that's a great story. And I love how you sort of followed your passion. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in New Jersey. And living so close to New York City, along with knowing that I wanted to work in fashion, I always knew that I wanted to live in New York City and work in New York City and have an exciting career there. So that was also very much a part of like growing up, going into the city, going to Broadway shows, going shopping at fabulous stores. Like I loved going to Saks on Fifth Avenue as a child, especially at Christmas time, and seeing the windows and just being part of everything that has to do with like New York and shopping.
That's awesome. I love that. So I'm going to jump ahead. So how would you describe your leadership style and how has it evolved over your career?
How I would describe it, we actually just went through our end of year review process, and the feedback that I got was very consistent with what I've had for the past 30 years. and that's that I'm direct and decisive. It's always been how I operate. But I guess obviously over the years, especially like the past, 15 to 20 that I've been more in leadership roles, I've learned that I do need to adapt my very direct style often when I'm dealing with someone who might not receive directness quite as well as others do. So I would say, it's paid forward for me to stay true to my style, but also learn adaptability to others as well.
I love
One
that.
other thing that I thought I would mention about my leadership style as well that I think isn't quite kind of important to understanding more about me and possible paths for other people is that in my past 3 roles, I've worked for founders and I've been, the second in charge basically to the founder, to the CEO in founder led brands. And I've definitely learned as well, it takes a different type of leader to be able to work with a founder versus working with a brand that the founder isn't there anymore, or it's a brand that's been created by, a conglomerate or something like that. You really have to be really comfortable working with people that are prolific idea generators tends to be the type of background of a founder, and you have to be comfortable with taking somebody else's ideas for the most part and turning them into something commercial because founders often have really great ideas and did something really commercial in the beginning, but then as they evolved they kind of like realize that they aren't the most commercial person in the world and they tend to be more creative. And you really have to be good at listening and thinking in the moment and being able to give people feedback like, "Hey, that idea is fantastic, but I'm not quite sure how we're going to execute it. Let me take that away and think about it. But that other idea that you had that we talked about the other day, I've been thinking about that and I think it's brilliant. And here's some ideas on how I think we can execute it." And just keep the rapport going, respect the creativity, but also understand that your role is to make these great ideas commercial.
I love that. That is such a great way of putting it. And there are so many brands that are founded by, creative founders. And sometimes they don't necessarily have the skills to bring them to life. And it's so important to find somebody who kind of enjoys that. It's not just about coming up with the creative idea, it's about bringing it to life, which is creative in its own way. I think that's super interesting.
Well, I always kind of think about the best ideas are usually not my ideas, but I'm really, really good at recognizing the ideas. And I'm kind of proud of that still. It's definitely paid forward for me.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I went to this seminar in London a couple months ago. It was I attended it, and I attended it with our CFO, who also happens to be a woman. And the theme of this seminar was, what is your leadership purpose? Like kind of what were you meant to do in leadership roles? And we had to answer all these questions and like think about things and talk about things. And it ended up that my leadership purpose is an enabler of creativity. By the way, I answered questions about my background and what I loved as a child and the situations that I excel in at work and everything. And it kind of like really shone a light on that I did choose the right path by working with founders because apparently I am an enabler of their creativity.
I love it. That's awesome. What a great skill. So we talked a little bit about what Biden is all about in the opener, but I know that I did a little bit more research and I found that their values are stylish, grounded, and uplifting. And I thought it might be fun to talk about how you bring these to life, not only from the product perspective, but leading your teams.
That's really interesting that you're applying that to people and not product because we absolutely do that. In fact, I was having a conversation with our chief product officer who works for me, and we were interviewing some candidates for a pretty high level role, a head of children's wear role. And we spoke to three really, really highly qualified people. And we actually applied, stylish grounding and uplifting to how they performed in the interview process. And we were, grounded is one of those things where it's like, do we really feel they're gonna, like, roll up their sleeves and get into the nitty-gritty? Can they handle it? And are they fast enough, but are they smart enough? So we think about those types of traits where someone who's grounded, someone who's stylish, it's quite obvious. How do they appear? Do they have a sense of personal style? It doesn't have to be Boden style necessarily, but, do they have a sense of who they are? Are they comfortable in their skin? Do they have a presence? And then uplifting is definitely, especially since we're a British company, we definitely wanna work for people who know how to have a laugh and how to have fun. And, this woman who works for me, Christina, she said about one of the candidates, "I don't think I would wanna be stuck in an airport with them for 10 hours. I don't know how uplifting they are." And we all had a little giggle and we were like, "Yeah, that's actually a really important trait to us when you work at Boden, that you would wanna travel with that person and that they can have a laugh with you."
That's actually a great thing to think about. Would you wanna be in an airport with someone that you work with? I love that.
She she
Um,
calls it the airport test. I had
the
never
air
heard her say that before. I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm totally stealing that. Everyone's gonna have to pass the airport test now."
That's great. Um, so another part of your job as chief commercial officer, which we didn't really discuss yet, is that you probably are having to work with a lot of different teams like marketing, merchandising, design. Um, can you talk a little bit about fostering collaboration in that way? I think a lot of people, when they think about teams, they just think about managing, their own team or their direct reports, but oftentimes it's about managing the wider group.
Yeah, I actually in this role have the broadest remit I've had in my career. I manage the design team, I manage the buying team, I manage we call planning merchandising in the UK. I manage the merchandising team, brand marketing, customer insight, and creative services. So to say the least, it's a broad range of departments and functions and skill set. I probably spend well over half of my time purely facilitating collaboration between my leaders and my leaders' teams. It's
Hmm.
so, so critical to the success of what we do that we're all on the same page. In particular, design, product, and brand, because we just opened, our first retail shop in the US, but the vast majority of our business is all digital. So how we show up to our customer is critical to our success, and if those 3 teams are not on the same page, it's when we fail.
Yeah, it's so important. But can you talk a little bit about how you're able to foster the collaboration? Is it do you think it has to do with the fact that you're overseeing all of them?
I think it has to do with the fact that, um, I'm a good listener,
Yeah.
and oftentimes they'll come to me individually because they're at an impasse with someone else in one of those other departments, and they're like, "Hey, can we have a conversation with so and so? We're trying to get through something. We can't come to an agreement. We need you to help us get there." And they're not necessarily sometimes it's like we need someone to just make a decision and that will be you. But oftentimes it's more about we just need someone to have a perspective on this and help us to maybe see an angle that we're not considering. And can you help us through that? So I spend a lot of my time trying to actually not make the decision. It sounds, kind of weird, but
Mhm.
to get them to make the decision.
Yeah, that's important. That gives people ownership. I love that. That actually ties into the next question, I think, which is if there's any other strategies that you found effective in developing, future leaders.
I would say definitely fostering collaboration and empathy. It's once you get to a certain point in leadership, I actually have a career coach, and I was actually just talking to her about this and my team today, is that, I have a pretty strong comfort level right now of managing multiple functions and fostering this collaboration. But a lot of the leaders that work for me right now, this is the first time that they've been this close to the top, for lack of a better word. And they're really, really good at managing their own teams and telling people what to do. And they're still not great at that cross functional peer, you know, even VPC level type of collaboration with others. So I feel like putting them in those situations, kind of by force often enables it as well. And coaching them when they're having a conversation with one of their peers and it doesn't go well, me kind of using the moment as a teaching moment, like, hey, why don't we talk about why that didn't go well? Do you think maybe if you had said it this way, it would have been more receptive? And then just kind of talking about maybe how it could go better the next time.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. I would love to just ask you quickly. I love that you have a coach. How did you go about getting your coach? That's always a question that our members and listeners are always interested in.
It's interesting, how I found my coach. So, when I started the role at Boden, we actually were going through kind of a tough time. And actually, our chairman is a big proponent of coaching. And one of the first things he said to me, was, "I think it'd be good for you to have a coach, to have someone impartial to speak to as we maneuver through this tough business time." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm all for that." And we have a non-executive director on our board who is very well connected in the UK. And Julian suggested that I speak to him about a coach recommendation. So I did, and that's how I found Meg, my coach, who is a former CEO of a British brand and now is an NED on a lot of different boards. And she helps me with a lot of things, but one of the things that she helps me with, which I didn't really recognize in the beginning that I need, that is super invaluable, is she helps me with nuance of British culture in leadership.
That's
Like,
super interesting.
yeah, how I'm being perceived by the board when I say something in a certain way. What is a typical way to write a board paper or to present a business case? It's actually really, really different than what we do in the US. And having her guidance, especially early on when I was giving monthly board presentations on the status of how quickly we were going to turn around the product and what was going on, it was really, really helpful.
Wow, that is so interesting. I love that. That's perfect. I'm going to jump ahead. We have to always talk about AI in all of our interviews. It's such a hot topic. So I'm sure that you're leveraging AI, I'm assuming, and customer insights and all of that good stuff. How do you balance, these data-driven decisions with creative intuition? I mean, I actually was just at a talk with Anna Wintour, and she talked about the importance of creative intuition. And it's just stuck with me. But obviously, you need data-driven decisions. So how do you sort of balance that?
Well, it's interesting, as I mentioned before, customer insight falls under my remit. The part of it that has to do with mostly product and how we call our customer Kate, how Kate is feeling about a future range, predictively, or a current range, and that type of thing. So I'm going to do a little plug here. We use a company called First Insight which is AI driven, that sends out surveys to our customers and potential customers about our future ranges and current ranges. And we get back AI summaries of what the customer said about the products. And it also ranks the product on a scale of 1 to 10 by how what the customer thought about the price and the details and all of that, this like algorithm that they have. This has been a great tool, and we've used it to kind of cut the tails, so to speak, and eliminate things that really just aren't that important. And we've also used it to identify bestsellers that we didn't think would be as good as the customer thought they was. And the predictive tool has been pretty correct. But I will say, in support of what Anna Winter said, that you have to just use your gut instinct sometimes. Sometimes because we're asking Kate about this almost a year ahead of time, she's just not ready for some things yet, and she's not ready to move on. And if we listen to everything that First Insight was telling us, our ranges would likely look old and stale. So we do have to put that lens on it, like this is a new shape, this is a new print, this is new fashion, this is trend, and she doesn't like it for these reasons, but our design team loves it, we love it, we've seen it on the runway, we know it's coming, we're still gonna buy it anyway, and we do that all of the time.
That's great. Yeah, it's having the confidence too, of knowing that you know the customer as well. You're obviously you want the AI and the data um
Yeah,
facts, but you
and
also know the customer.
which is fantastic, and I mean, I would say that without it, we would not be as successful as we have been with predicting the right things, but if we listen to it all the time, we would definitely lose a lot of the fun and the whimsy
Yeah.
of of who we are, and we
Yeah, I
can't
love
let
that.
that happen.
I love that. Just in closing, this is another question that we like to ask the folks that we interview. So, what advice would you give to women listening who are aspiring to executive roles in fashion and retail?
I would say know what you want as your end goal, kind of starting out on your journey. The goal could be broad. It doesn't have to be like super specific, but I think in my experience, especially with my career, I always had a plan, and the plan didn't always go accordingly to what I thought the plan would be. But the fact that I had a plan was something that served me well. So, I guess, for example, I would say that, like we were talking about before, when I graduated from college, I knew that I wanted to live and work in New York City. I wanted to work in the fashion industry. I wanted to travel to really cool places for my job. And I wanted to work for brands and companies that gave me a pathway to a career that I knew that I would not only be successful at, that I would actually enjoy. And that was kind of that's always kind of been my guide in the roles that I've chosen. And I would say the only thing that's kind of gone off the plan is that I don't live in New York City anymore. I actually live in London most of the time. And when I was at Anthropologie, I lived in Philadelphia. But that wasn't actually the most important part of the plan. The most important part of the plan was to have a pathway to a successful career that I loved. And I've been able to say that I've been stayed true to that for 30 years.
It's great. It's all about manifesting, right?
Yeah, I'm a big, like, visualizer. Like, how do I
Yes.
want this to look? Like, how do I want this to be? But I think you also have to be, I don't even know if it's kind with yourself, but you have to be flexible, and you have to be
Yeah.
open to change. And I am the kind of person that visualizes the future, but I'm also receptive to, like, going off the path and taking maybe not a detour, but, taking a wander and seeing where that
Yeah.
leads you to.
Yeah. And also, obviously having a plan too. Is so important, sort of, knowing what you want and then going for it. So it's been so great chatting with you, Catherine. I feel like I learned so much in the short time that we've been together. I really loved all your answers, and I'm so excited to hear about what's next for you and for Boden. As you mentioned on the call, on the lead up to the call, you guys are opening up stores in the U.S., which is exciting. And I'm just looking forward to learning all about what you have in store for 2026. So, thanks for your time. Happy holidays, and hopefully we can connect in real life soon.
That would be great, Melissa. Thank you. And happy holidays to you as well.
Thanks for listening. For more information on this podcast, please go to womeninretail.com/podcasts for show notes. Women in Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a few moments to rate and review our show. Lastly, if you're a female retail leader interested in joining our community at Women in Retail Leadership Circle, visit womeninretail.com/apply. Thanks, and until next time, this has been Women in Retail Talks.
Reimagine your leadership at the 2026 Women in Retail Leadership Summit, held April 27th through the 29th in Miami. Register now at womeninretailsummit.com and save $100 with discount code PODCAST.